right, hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm Serena, your host, and I am sitting here with Jodie.
Hi everyone, my name is Jodie Lynn. I am a health and wellness coach. I'm certified through the IIN, which is the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. I am also certified in hormones, and I'm certified as a personal trainer through the National Academy of Sports Medicine. I'm here today to talk to you about what it is a health coach does.
Yes, because I don't know, and my job today and for every other episode that we do is to just bring you different ways that you can take care of yourself. So instead of having to, I have a stomach ache today, I better go to the doctor and find out what's wrong, learning different ways that we can find out what's happening either internally or externally to be able to better take care of our bodies. So can you tell me what a health coach does? So if I wanted to hire you as a health coach, what would you do for me?
So as you know, every health coach is going to be different in what they actually focus on, but my job is basically to help you find your natural healthy balance. So I would like to work with the individual knowing more about what's going on with them, what their symptoms are, and what their goals are. If they've seen a doctor and a doctor prescribes them a certain idea of a way to eat to help whatever issues they're having, then I delve into that more, find out what their issues are, what the best course of action is as far as their nutrition. If there's an exercise plan, I help them with that as well. If somebody is just coming to me saying they just want to lose some weight, then we look at more specifically what they're eating and what we can fix to get that healthy balance for them. But a lot of the times my clients that come to me are dealing more with autoimmune diseases, hormone issues. So that's where I really get into it with them, looking at what their medical records are showing. If they have blood tests, I can look at that, listening to what their symptoms are, and then we kind of piece it all together to figure out the best course of action for them, whether I'm going to put them on a hormone balance to help them reset their hormones, or whether I'm going to put them on a sugar detox if they have too much sugar in their system and their glucose levels are too high, or whether I'm just going to work on balancing what they're eating and focusing more on it being healthier and a better balance of the omega-3s versus the omega-6s type thing. So each client is individual, and so that's what I focus on, their individual needs.
Right, and that's so awesome because there's different things in life where you go about that things are just prescribed to like a general public. So to be able to work with someone like you focuses on, so you would tell me something different than you would tell your next client, and I find that extremely beneficial. Can you give me a couple examples of what it means to have like hormone imbalances? Like what kinds of hormones go out of balance and how does that affect the body?
So there's a lot of different hormones that go out of balance, tons of hormones that are coursing through our bodies, but the main ones that we look at are typically your thyroid, because we're hearing a lot of people who are saying that they feel sluggish and they can't lose weight. So we will take a look at their specific thyroid hormones. So their TSH, which is where a lot of doctors will start with. It's your thyroid secreting hormone. It's whether the thyroid is listening when it's being told to secrete the thyroid hormone. And that's just a really basic way to start, but that's really not the answer for everybody. But that's usually where the doctors stop. If they see you're within a range, that's the standard Western range, then they say you're good to go, your thyroid's fine, and we move on. We have found, however, that the TSH is only the beginning point, and the optimal range is a lot less than what they're saying it is.
Right.
And then we look at other factors like your free T3, your free T4, and your reverse T3. The free T3 and the free T4 are the active. The free T4 converts into the free T3, which is the active hormone that helps to make sure your thyroid is actually functioning properly. So that's where you start getting more answers from.
Okay.
And then also in line with that, we are seeing a lot of people with hypothyroidism. So that means that their thyroid's not listening and not doing what it's supposed to do as well as it should. And 90% of those cases turn out to be Hashimoto's, which is actually an autoimmune disease. So then we're looking at their TPOs, which are their antibodies, and their thyroglobulins, which are also the antibodies. So we're looking to see if those are in range, and if not, then we know that we have an autoimmune. And a lot of the times, autoimmunes come from things like leaky gut. So then we're looking at inflammation in the body to see if there's a type of food that they're eating that could be causing this leaky gut, that could be throwing off their antibodies in the body, which will be attacking gluten typically or dairy typically, which is very similar to the thyroid, and then it'll attack the thyroid. So that's what an autoimmune disease really is. It's your body is attacking itself because it thinks that something in the body is foreign.
Right.
So that's one whole area that you can get into. I also look at sex hormones, specifically estrogen and progesterone. A lot of people can look and see that their estrogen can be fine or their progesterone can be fine, but what they're not seeing is that in ratio they're not fine. You can be in what's called an estrogen dominant state.
Right.
When you're in an estrogen dominant state, then you have to start worrying about female cancers. Unfortunately, I have a history of breast cancer where I was clearly in an estrogen dominant state. So then we have to look at, well, how do we prevent this from happening? We have to figure out how to bring up the progesterone, how to lower the estrogen to get them both within ratio of each other. So those are just two of the examples of the hormones that I really look at.
Oh, wow. So those are very big things that can happen from that. So how does somebody, is it something that people are doing that kind of throws that off? Are these things that can be prevented or corrected?
Yes, so there's a lot of different things, and it definitely will depend on a case-by-case situation. A lot of it has to do with what we're eating. So as I said, gluten can be a big factor for people with autoimmune diseases, and it's just triggering the body to start reacting to the gluten and other things in the body that look like gluten. So we can fix that with nutrition. And of course there's meds for all that, but the goal is to do everything naturally so you don't have to be on meds.
Well, because going back to the gut, when you're taking all the different kinds of medications, you're basically annihilating your microbiome.
Correct.
So it's kind of counterproductive.
Right, and when you have a leaky gut, what's happening is you're also throwing off your microbiome, because then what you're doing is, a leaky gut is essentially you're making holes within the gut lining that's supposed to protect you and keep everything that's supposed to stay within the GI in there, and things that are supposed to go out can go out through the smaller permutations. But when we have leaky gut, those holes are getting bigger and bigger, and proteins are starting to exit into the bloodstream, and that's where we start having problems.
Now, what is leaky gut? Like, how do I know? Like, is that something medically diagnosed?
It can be. They can do what's called, why am I going to blank on my term now, an endoscopy, to go in and take a look at what's going on with the GI tract, see if there's inflammation. It's also usually diagnosed through symptoms. So if you have IBS symptoms, some GIs will just say you have IBS and call it a disease, but we're now learning that IBS is actually a symptom of leaky gut. It's irritable bowel syndrome. So symptoms that are often linked to leaky gut will be bloating, gas pains, constipation, diarrhea. So those are just some of the things that we know is going on that we can take a deeper look into what could be causing this. And then leaky gut leads to other issues in the body, inflammation, because things are now leaving the safety of the gut lining, going into the bloodstream, and then you can start looking at fatigue, you can start looking at the autoimmune diseases, you can start looking at hair loss, you can look at skin issues, like acne can be caused by this.
Wow.
Hives is another one. So there's so many different symptoms, and it's really hard to know because these symptoms go along with so many other diseases that it's really hard to specify until you start specifically looking into the issue of the leaky gut, which typically involves either eliminating foods from the diet to see if that will help, or doing a food inflammation test, which is something that we offer as well.
Right, and so you said food elimination test. So I've seen a lot of people talking about doing like different challenges and things about food eliminations. Now, is that something that people should be doing outside of the care of a health coach or a physician?
So a lot of the times people are doing these challenges and then not really understanding what to look for as far as the symptoms and to see if it's helping. So I can give you an example. One of my former clients was doing exactly that. She was removing gluten, she was removing dairy, hoping to see an impact on the eczema that she was dealing with. She had been plagued with eczema for years and was desperate to try to find something to make it go away. And she wasn't finding any answers with the dairy or with the gluten, and she didn't really know what to look for or how long to do it for. So she finally came to me, and what I ended up doing was one of my food inflammation tests on her, and we found out it wasn't dairy, it wasn't gluten, more it was almonds. and she had been adding almond milk to replace the dairy.
Oh no.
So once we took the almonds out and the almond milk and anything that cross-contaminates with almonds, she started to see a difference almost immediately. And after a month, she was completely eczema-free.
That's amazing.
And had not been that way since she was a teenager. So yes, you can certainly try to pull foods out, but a lot of the times you're left with questions and you don't do it long enough, so you don't really give it a chance, or you don't know how to reintroduce it to look for the symptoms.
Right.
And that's what someone like me can do for you, is help guide you along the way and make sure that you are understanding the impacts that it's having and really learning from this challenge. So I do it with my clients who don't want to do the food elimination test because, or they don't want to do an inflammation test because it involves pricking your finger and taking your blood. Some people not so comfortable with that idea. So instead I put them on a food elimination challenge, but I do it in a specific way that I know how to pull out the foods, watch for symptoms, see how they're feeling, know the specific length of time to do it for, and then show them how to reintroduce it and watch for symptoms and how long you have to reintroduce the food for, and guide them that way so that they get the true answers that they're looking for.
That's amazing. And I really feel like it interests me so much so that it all comes back to what we're putting inside of our body. Every time, every person that in the health field that I speak to always talks about it. It all starts with what we're putting inside of our body. Now, is there something across your clients, like when you bring on a new client, what would be the first couple of different things you might look for?
I'm looking at their symptoms, what they're feeling, why they're there in the first place. And then I do a health history on them to really understand what they ate as a child, what they're currently eating, what the health history is of their parents, to see if there's any kind of links, what their exercise is like. And then asking questions about, if they're females, ask them about their periods to see if they're still going through them, what they're experiencing. That goes towards helping me understand more hormonal things.
Right.
I ask them about their blood type if they know it, because some people can do a diet based on their blood type.
Is that a real thing?
It is a real thing. I've seen it in some people, but I don't use it very often, to be honest with you. But I listen to other people who work with that specifically and have found a lot of positives with it. So.
Interesting. 'Cause I see people talk about it all the time, and I was like, all right, but that's good to know.
It really is, like if you're type A, type B, or type O, it really goes to say, one type, and I'd have to go back and research it, to be honest with you, but like one of them is more geared towards being a vegetarian because it was before the industrial period, so they didn't really have access to different types of foods. And the type B, I think, is more geared towards being a vegetarian and eating animals because their body has adapted to it. And then there's the type O, and then the type AB. So they all go through the different changes of nutrition that we've seen based on how we lived and how their blood types have adapted to it.
Wow.
So it's interesting.
Awesome.
I haven't gone there, but I do like to find out about blood types and just see how they're eating and see if that fits into it at all. More from my curiosity than anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about when people get their diets prescribed to them according to their DNA?
That one, I've looked at that
brand
also.
new.
It is brand new. I did one of those DNA tests as well, just to see. I don't know where to go with that, because your DNA is one thing, but how your DNA expresses itself is a completely different thing. So I don't know that you can completely rely on your DNA for that, because your environment's going to change that. Your experiences, for example, the number of pregnancies that you've had could change that. Whether you are experiencing an autoimmune disease or not can change that. So it's an interesting place to start from, but I don't rely on it. I rely more on my client's experience, where they are in life, and their symptoms.
Right. So for example, my youngest not being able to eat dairy, she has a lot of stomach issues, intestinal issues when she does consume even the smallest amount of dairy. We know for days, we hear about it for days. And I feel really bad for her a lot of times, mostly because she's 8 years old now. So up until about a year ago, when we first discovered that it was the dairy that was affecting her, she was eating her grilled cheese sandwich and her macaroni and ice cream or chocolate, whatever. And now she can't have it anymore.
I know.
It's so heartbreaking for her. And then the other two kids, so now none of us, we try very hard that all of us eat that way as well, just to kind of, rally behind her. I won't eat macaroni because you can't have macaroni. And it's very difficult, but I'm curious to know if that's actually what is going on with her.
Yeah, so that's, if she's done an actual lactose intolerance test,
Her doctors won't.
They won't do it on her.
She's too young.
Okay, I didn't. So I went through this with two of my kids as well, and one of them is 4 years older than the other one, and she did do the lactose intolerance test and came up positive, and the younger one came up negative. To be honest, I don't remember how old they were, but they're now 11 and 15, so I want to say she might have been 8 when she did it, 7 or 8, and the other one was then 11 or 12 at the time. But I did my food inflammation testing on her because she was definitely having issues every time she ate dairy. And sure enough, she came back positive for sensitivity to casein, which is the main protein in dairy, and to cow's milk, so specifically to that type of milk. So now I know I need to pull the dairy from her completely, as well as gluten, which is another one for her. We haven't tested her for celiac, but she came up high on the gluten sensitivity, so I've had to pull both of those as well. So that gave me a more definitive answer than just guessing.
Yeah.
It's hard to know whether it's lactose intolerance versus it being a actual sensitivity to dairy. They're two different. The lactose intolerance is when you're missing the enzyme, so you can't break down the sugars in the milk. So if you give her the lactose-free milk, and if she's okay with it, then that can kind of be your answer. But if it's a true dairy sensitivity, then that would best be told by doing one of my tests.
Right.
It's hard to know. The symptoms are the same though. You get the gas, you get the bloating, you get the pain. You can go from having diarrhea to having constipation to having both of them. So it's easier to know the answer. And then to the other two not having the dairy, I'm not either pro or con dairy, to be honest with you. I wish I could have dairy because I love it. I just can't because I'm highly sensitive to it. But there's a lot of turnaround on the beliefs of pulling a dairy or one of those food groups from somebody who doesn't have an intolerance.
Right.
You then start worrying about, am I going to develop it? It causes them to have an intolerance to it if they don't actually have one.
Right.
So something to be aware of also.
I just feel like with dairy that's you know what, I feel like that's a whole nother show.
It really is.
It's a whole nother show. Dairy is in a league of its own.
Absolutely.
Okay, so tell me, what is your favorite thing to do with a client?
Most of the clients I see are women, and most of them are right in their 40s, going through perimenopause, going through hormonal changes, so I really like to put them on a hormone reset. That's probably my favorite thing, and that just involves removing certain food groups from the body, giving your body a chance to reset itself, and then reintroducing those foods and watching for any negative impacts on it. If there are none, then we move forward and reintroduce the next one, because my goal is not to keep them off of any specific food. If they enjoy eating a food group like meat or gluten or dairy, then my goal is to really teach them how to eat it in the best healthy way they can. So by far that's been my favorite. I've seen a lot of positive results from that. People just feeling so much better, brain fog going away, sugar cravings going away, bloating going away, and then just having the energy then to be able to go out and exercise or just be with their children. You know, we're in our 40s and our 50s, we should have that energy, but the food is what's bogging us down. So helping clear that out for them has been so rewarding. And just the positive, you know, and also that inflammation test, that one client who was finally eczema free, that's another one that I love. Like just being able to give people the answers to have them feeling better and healthy and focusing on moving forward with a healthy lifestyle.
Right, and then that's so awesome that you were able to just pull the almonds, and that was such a simple fix.
For her it was. It was very clear cut. It's not always that way. It definitely is not, but for her it was, and I was so thrilled about it. And I've seen the same with my own son who has a dairy allergy, and you know, he breaks out in eczema. He gets really bad eczema. So when I pull the dairy from him, he's clear. And then if he goes out and sneaks a milkshake somewhere, I know about it, because that night he's complaining to me about eczema again.
You know, this is bringing all kinds of things to the surface. Our son, who's our middle child, used to have terrible eczema all over his chest and his back, and we used to tell him that he had alligator skin, is what we would call it, alligator skin. And it was always really, you know, painful and uncomfortable for him. And then when we removed the dairy, because of our youngest,
his eczema went away.
He doesn't have eczema.
Well, there you go. That's awesome.
Huh.
So things you learn just by playing, and but that just goes to show that not everybody understands what the impact is of the food on the body. Like you didn't really put two and two together that the eczema was being caused by the dairy, but now you see because you pulled the dairy from him, he doesn't have the eczema anymore. So that's an answer for you. So That's part of what I help people do, is just really understand the impact of the food on their body and how to live their best life.
And what made you decide to do what you do? Do you have
So
a
many
pivotal
things.
moment?
I do. I mean, other than my kids having all the food allergies that they had, it really was when I got diagnosed with breast cancer. My son was my youngest of 5. He was 4 months old. And up until that point, I had no reason to believe that I would ever have breast cancer. There was no history of it in my family. At that time, I was reading, if you have more than 3 children, less chance of getting it. If you nurse them all, less chance of getting it. If you're active, which I'm a runner, less chance of getting it. If you eat healthy, I thought I was eating healthy, less chance of getting it, and yet there I was at 37 being diagnosed with breast cancer. Somebody at that point brought me a book and some green juice. And the book was by Chris Carr, and the green juice was one of her recipes. And it made me stop and really look at it and understand that food had a large impact on why I probably developed breast cancer. What I was eating, being a vegetarian, I was eating a lot of soy. That's a whole other topic as well, very controversial. And the sugar. I was a pastitarian, not really a vegetarian. I was eating a lot of white pastas. So reading that book and going through my experience really made me stop and think, wow, if I didn't know this, and I love to research, how many other people don't know this?
Right.
So I started looking more and more at different people in the health field, reading about what they were saying about the impact of food, and then I finally enrolled in the IIN, and it was just eye-opening to all the different dietary theories that are out there, but it was more about learning how to work with each individual, and we coined the term bio-individuality, to really understand what each specific body needs and how it's not the same as the other person. So what was right for me wouldn't be right for the next person. What was wrong for me wouldn't necessarily have been wrong for the next person. So that's what changed my life. And I was a former health law attorney, and I just kind of took that passion for health and turned it into being a health coach instead.
That is so awesome. I love your story. I think it's really great. And then you mentioned that you were a runner, and we've been speaking back and forth about maybe giving some tips about running. So my thing is I really enjoy running, but I can't seem to get myself to love it enough to make a routine out of running. So I'll run like 3 days a week, probably about 3 miles, 2 miles, 3 miles at a time. And then if I miss a day, that's it. It's just blown out of the water. Then I don't run again for a long time, and then I'll start again, and it's the whole story all like over and over. And I know that a lot of times people don't start a running routine or their journey into running because there's a lot of well, it's just really hard, I can't do it because I'm this or I'm that. So people talk themselves out of it. What can you tell us, maybe some tips to start a running routine?
Okay. Well, everybody's journey is going to be different, like you said. Everybody has different reasons why they want to run and why they don't. For me, running is truly about releasing stress. That's my yoga, that's my meditation, that's my religion. It's just how I deal with everything. I have 5 children, so running lets me escape the crazy at the same time. But I started off like anyone else. I didn't have the ability to really run more than half a mile without being out of breath. I didn't have the endurance for it, so I really built up to it. And that's what I encourage anyone to do if they're really interested in trying running. It's a slow process of building up and getting yourself ready for it. You don't want to dive right into it. You could injure yourself if you don't have the right position while running. You can also just turn yourself off of it because you're gasping for breath and you feel like, okay, this isn't right for me. So I recommend to anybody who's starting out with running to just take it slow. Walk 2 minutes, run 1 minute. Run at a comfortable pace. Walk 2 minutes, run 1 minute. Kind of like the high intensity interval training. It's building up your endurance. It's building up your strength. Definitely doing core exercises to help build up your muscles to get you ready for that. It's very important. People don't realize with running, it's not just about the mechanisms of running. Be strong upper body. Your core has to be held tight. Your back has to be held in a nice firm position so you don't injure yourself. When your legs, your hips, everything's involved. Injuries start from the feet all the way up through the kinetic chain. So you really just want to make sure that you incorporate strength training with the running, and then with the running itself, starting with the high intensity interval training, slowly walk, run, and then you slowly build yourself up to it. If you do 2 minutes walking, 1 minute running, and you make it to a mile, then the next time you go out there, you can try the reverse, 1 minute walking, 2 minutes running, and then you can do the opposite for the second mile as you keep building up your pace. and your distance. And eventually, it becomes easier to breathe while you're running. It gets easier to run a little bit faster. But it's, like I said, it's not something you just dive into. It's taking it, one day at a time. Or my favorite mantra that I'm wearing on my wrist is one step at a time. Yeah.
It's just like weight training. You're not going to just go to the gym and pick up the 100-pound dumbbells, or you're not just going to walk into a yoga class and stand on your head.
That would be fun.
It would be a lot of fun. One day we'll stand on our heads. But this has been amazing. So much information.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for being here. I'm really excited to have you, and I look forward to your services for my family.
Oh, I would love to help you out. Again, this is my passion.
Ooh. I have one more question. How does somebody find a health coach in their area? So you might not be local to me. If you are, somewhere else, anywhere else, what would somebody do to find a health coach?
So there's different areas. You can go to Institute of Integrative Nutrition and you can look up health coaching. You can go to just type in the words health coaching and many pop up. You can look for functional medical practitioners who might be able to recommend a health coach to you because often they work with them. I will currently be working with a physician here in Ashburn who will be providing my services to her patients. So there's definitely different ways to reach out to people. But just type in health coach in Google and you'll find someone in your area, and just find out more about where they're accredited through and see if it's a right fit for you. You have to give them a call, speak to them, and find out if it's someone that you think you can work with. A lot of the times I will do a free session with my clients and just make sure we get along and make sure that I can provide for them what they need, and me being an accountability partner, which is key in what a health coach does, is just being able to be there and support them. So you want to make sure that you give them that call, make sure that you can, work with each other and you're willing to listen to each other. That's super important.
Yes.
And then go from there.
That's fantastic. So if you guys are local to us, you'll be able to find Jodie through the different channels that we'll link down below. And also really hope that you enjoyed being here today. Go ahead, leave some comments, send us an email. You can reach me at Serenaandjoshsutterfield@gmail.com. I'll leave that. And you can visit my website at serenaandjosh.com. Thank you.
Thank you.